Yo, what's going on, guys? Yonder Gogeta here, and welcome to my review of Lost Judgment. This game is what the Judgment series was meant to be. Lost Judgment is a masterful upgrade of the first installment released on June 25th, 2019 worldwide. It does almost everything better, especially the combat and side activities. It does everything so well that this just might be not only one of my favorite games of 2021, but one of my favorite games of all time. If you're interested in hearing why, then stick around for a wild journey. Before we dive in, please like, comment, and subscribe. You guys have been awesome with the support, and even though it isn't as many views as the bigger people on the platform such as Angry Joe, who are awesome YouTubers by the way, it really means a lot to me. You guys are awesome. So the title of this first chapter depicts the core of the game's story. Unlike my other analysis or review videos, I'm going to keep this one spoiler free just so I can get as many people interested as I can, rather than just having a documentary of how I feel about it or what happens in the story. Like the first game, it revolves around Yagami, Kaito, and his other allies. However, instead of Kamurocho being the main location, it is now Yokohama. The game revolves around the concept of bullying. Japan has a different society than ours, of course, so things like bullying are a much different discussion than here. Kids aren't really taught to fight back against bullies as commonly as, say, the United States are, so it can be a pretty huge problem. The way this game in particular goes about the topic is how people respond to bullying. On one hand, you have the dark route of making the bullies pay in the underground methods, or you can rely on justice and law. But what happens when justice and law fail someone? To what lengths would that person go to bend the rules society has set in place to have their own personal justice fulfilled? These are some of the questions you will ask yourself not only throughout the game, but after you finish it as well. The characters who are newly introduced, such as Jin Kuwana, Akihiro Ehara, and Yoko Sawa-sensei, are some seriously well fleshed out characters who made this game truly excellent. For the cutscenes and cinematics, they are some of the best in the series in my opinion. They have incredible acting and choreography that can outright put goosebumps throughout your entire body. I'm going to show a clip from the story that truly stuck out to me. It doesn't have any spoilers since I'll cut those parts out as they aren't integral to the point I'm making, but if you want to go in completely blind, then feel free to skip to this part I'm showing on the screen. Keep in mind though, that this part was shown in the trailers as well. If you've played the game already, then you probably know what's coming, but if you haven't, then leave a comment if you think this acting is as excellent as I did. If you decided to watch it, then you can see what I'm saying here. The acting both voice and motion cap wise is superb. And it's not all just sad moments like this. There are countless moments where I was jumping out of my seat getting hyped up rooting for Yagami. If I can find any spoiler-free clips, then I will play them as I talk here. No other game I have played has made me feel so immersed and just downright awesome as this game has. As for the gameplay, they drastically improved the tailing and chase segments. For the tailing, Yagami will automatically take cover behind most objects, and if you're in a weird position, then you can hold down triangle to act casual and get the target's attention off of you. This makes it a lot less annoying. The chase sequence, aside from having some kick-ass music, are more interactive as well. You can now hit enemies with objects around the street, and you have to focus on your own health bar as you run, since it will slowly deplete. You can replenish it by correctly doing the quick time events and picking up the stamina and bottles scattered around the world. It makes it a little more interactive. This truly may be one of my favorite stories in all of gaming. Maybe I'm being biased, but I don't even really care. Even though there are some iffy parts that people may dislike, I did not mind them because pretty much everything was either foreshadowed or explained exceptionally well. I implore anyone who is watching this video, if you have not already, to play this game. It has an exceptional story that I think everyone should experience. Now, if the story doesn't captivate you, then maybe the next best thing from this game will. Let's talk about it.
Might controls everything.
Lost Judgment by far has the greatest combat in the entire Yakuza franchise, and I don't even think it's close. The next best thing to me would be Yakuza 0 because Majima was just so damn fun in that game. But to me, even he pales in comparison to Yagami's newly tweaked arsenal in this game. Let me explain why. It will take a while, so bear with me. I honestly don't even know where to begin, so let's start from scratch. By default, you start with the fastest attack speed from the previous Judgment game. This is already an amazing quality of life change because Yagami in the first game at the beginning felt like he had never fought before or something in comparison to how he acts in the cutscenes. In addition to this, there are other skills that can boost the combat speed even more. These are the Crane's hidden arts. You go from the default speed to what feels like a 2 times attack speed. This makes the combat high octane and allows you to take out foes like it's nothing. For some more universal changes, the game now focuses on combos and freedom rather than needing to rely on EX actions in some cases like in the first game. This makes Yagami feel like a bona fide Tekken character. The time it takes to change styles has been reduced to almost nothing, so instead of taking forever to change, you can now do it without hassle. This makes using all of your styles in your arsenal more compelling and actually beneficial since the game is designed for you to do so. You're kind of selling yourself short if you focus on nothing but one style. One more great thing they did in this game is bring back the battle rewards from Yakuza 0. By diversing your combat, you will be rewarded with additional SP to unlock new skills. This is great, because not only are you getting a more interactive experience by experimenting with your arsenal, but you are being rewarded for it in the process. RGG Studio added in this game a more RPG-like system where you can use equipment to give yourself some boosts and buffs in battles. Some can make your EX gauge increase quicker, make bleed last less time, and much more. You can adjust your equipment at any time through the items tab in the phone, so this makes preparing for battles fun. This is just one more addition that allows you to be freeform with how you want to play. Want to be on the safe side? Use equipment that gives you attack and defense. Want to crush your enemies? Then use equipment that makes your EX boost last longer. There are tons of various equipment for you to use and experiment with. One last thing that the combat team in this game did right was adding the hidden arts for each of the 3 fighting styles. Each fighting style has a different buff that will be added to you as you perform certain moves, and they can be stacked onto other styles' hidden arts once you unlock the certain skills. So you can have the speed of Crane while having the combat power of Tiger while having the tenacity of the Snake. This encourages the player to further diversify their style, which is amazing. These are some exceptional changes and are welcome, but it doesn't even stop there. Another great change is with the Crane style itself. A big complaint that I never talked about in my first Judgment review, which you should go watch after this one, is that the Crane style was actually fairly flawed in that game. It had a sort of linear attack spread, so even though it was meant for taking out multiple enemies, unless you had EX boost, you couldn't really do that efficiently. Tiger was just clearly the superior style for the most part. This has been remedied in this game, and now Crane is debatably better than Tiger in some cases, which is great since it makes a balanced array of options that allow you to freely craft your own style. And I haven't even gotten to the newly introduced Snake style, but I will get there in a moment. Crane now has faster attacks, more attacks, and a wider range of attacks, making it better in virtually every way. Certain skills, such as Sky Dancer, which allow you to jump in the air with elegance of a real crane, can help you avoid attacks and gunshots while juggling your enemies in the air. There are also other useful skills, such as True Crane Beast Slayer, which is a counter that lets you juggle your opponent even further, Projectile Counter, which does as it says, and additional EX actions like all the other styles. They definitely knew what the first game's Crane was missing and gave it a hell of a Zenkai boost. But what about the other styles, you may ask? Well, they're just as kick-ass. Let me show you. Although Tiger wasn't as bad as Crane in the first game, it still got buffed, which is pretty sick. As said before, it has its own hidden art. When you do a powerful attack by holding the triangle button in a combo, your damage will be increased for a set period of time. How long this lasts depends on the skills you have bought. This makes the Tiger style even more deadly than it was before, and you can easily kill any enemy in the game with some well-placed attacks. Even the legendary Amon clan can't take it for long. Another welcome addition to the Tiger's arsenal is the Perfect Guard skill. As the name suggests, you can perfectly guard an enemy's attack. When you do this, their guard will be broken instead, so theoretically, you can always have an opening if you play well enough. You can even guard against bladed weapons such as knives and swords once you unlock the certain skill for it. Flux Fissure makes a return in this game as well, but it isn't as much of a crutch as it was in the first game. It's more meant to be used as an addition to your combat style to add some more flair. You can abuse it if you want, but it isn't as powerful as before since it has a tighter timing now. This is one of the few nerfs in the game, but it's a welcome one considering just how powerful it actually was in the first game. Again, like the first game, you have an EX gauge, which can be seen at the top left here. Once at least one bar has been filled, you can activate EX Boost. While in EX Boost, your attacks are slightly faster, do more damage, prevent you from being stunned easily, and many other things. The reason I mention this here is because EX Boost can be an important factor depending on your combat style, since it gives you access to the power slide ability. During this, Yagami pulls out a skateboard and can knock enemies down alongside doing damage. This can be extremely useful in large, long battles. Of course, it also has various new EX actions. My favorite one is the EX Rock Breaker, which can be performed after breaking an enemy's guard. My second favorite is the EX Human Ramp, just because of how ridiculous it is. You literally ramp off of someone with a skateboard, and then come to rain down hell on their head. That shit is fucking cool. These things make Tiger way cooler and unique. Now for the Snake style, Snake is an Aikido based combat style, so as a result, you'll be grabbing and throwing enemies a lot. It isn't great for bosses and large enemies since they can easily break out of the throw before you can do anything, but it still has a lot of utility you can use in these cases that I'll get to momentarily. For large groups though, it can be one of the best styles alongside Crane. As said before, it focuses a lot on throws, and this makes it amazing for clearing out some space on the battleground for you to catch your bearings and pick off targets one by one. By grabbing an enemy and pressing triangle, X, or circle, you can perform certain attacks that can help you in certain situations. For example, if you're trying to finish an enemy off, then it's preferred to use triangle since it does more damage. Square will toss an enemy away, and circle will do a mixture of both that was slower if you grab them from behind. With this in mind, it's best to use it in addition to Snake and Tiger, but that doesn't mean that it can't steal the show. In the right circumstances, Snake can sink its fangs deep. It has a unique EX action where you can make enemies surrender. If they get scared during battle, you can do a heat action where Yagami scares them so deeply that they can no longer fight. It will instantly put their health to 0 no matter how strong they are. There are skills that can boost the chances of inflicting fear into the enemy as well. This fits the theme of the Aikido style perfectly while also being incredibly fun. Snake has all of the fundamental things that make a fighting style great as well. Most notably, the deflection you can do. No matter what the enemy is holding, if you time a parry right using the L1 button, Yagami will deflect a blow and end up behind them. This gives you an opening to attack them while they're vulnerable and make their weapons attacks nearly nullified. If you mistime the deflection, then Yagami will block normally. If they have a bladed weapon, they will inflict bleed onto you, which will slowly drain your health. It adds a sort of skill factor to it. On top of this, it also has a traditional counter. When your EX gauge is at 1 bar or below, lock onto an enemy who is attacking you and press circle. This will throw them away and give you an opening. It also has throws you can perform while on the ground, which adds even more utility. You can even use enemies as a meat shield and break out of enemy throws. As if all of this wasn't enough, then you can completely disarm an enemy by grabbing them and pressing circle from the front. If you do the command prompt correctly, you will completely knock the weapon out of the enemy's hands. Note that you cannot perform this against powerful enemies, but you can still do it to deal some damage nonetheless. Oh, and the cool extracts from the previous game, they're back as well, giving you even more power and freedom to kick ass. But hell, they aren't even needed with how fucking great the combat and core is in this game. The RGG studio did a hell of a job with not only making the Snake style, but improving the combat as a whole. When I played, I could not believe how fun and freeform it was. It made the boss battles throughout the game even more badass because I felt like I was truly in the zone in battle. The combat carries this game to completely new heights and makes it way more fun in general. I could see myself playing this forever. In a new format from the Yakuza style games comes the school stories. I would call it a side thing, but really, it has its own story that really should be considered a main storyline with how much game time it actually gives you. Don't get this confused with the side cases, which are still in this game. These are mostly different, although they do overlap in certain cases. The school stories become available in Chapter 2 after Yagami is almost busted by the MRC president again for the misunderstanding of the incident during the previous couple chapters. To prove his innocence and get into the school, he offers to become the MRC's advisor since he is a real detective and can keep the club from being shut down. She accepts after Yagami passes her test, and this is where the true investigation begins. The school stories revolve around the investigation of an entity called the Professor who is going around trying to get kids to go down the dark paths of life. The Professor does this by sending letters to students and giving them a nudge to awaken their inner evil. It is the job of the MRC to take down this entity to save the integrity of the students. There are 10 different paths you will need to complete in order to complete your investigation. These paths are the MRC Club, obviously, as well as the dance, robotics, boxing, biking, photography, casino, girls bar, skating, and esports stories. Some are longer than others, but each has a meaning. The main 5 are dance, robotics, boxing, biking, and the MRC. For the dancing club, you have a rhythm game with 4 different songs where you try to learn more about the investigation, as well as teaching the girls how to dance and aim to win the finals. I really enjoyed the karaoke minigames from the Yakuza games, and although I would love to hear Kimura's singing voice in this game, the dancing is a nice substitute for this. For each song, there is a different focus of aesthetic, so you can go out and buy new outfits to match the occasion. You can also unlock different solos such as breakdancing and popping. There's a lot of fun to be had here, and it's definitely one of my personal favorite side activities in the game, especially considering Yagami's voice actor is one of the best dancers in Japan. The Robotics Club is probably the longest one of all, but it has a fantastic story and some pretty fun gameplay once you get the hang of it. As usual, you join the club for investigation. As you investigate, you help the team by taking control of their drones since the previous drone person had quit due to the club president being too strict and closed-minded. As you progress through the tournaments, you can make more powerful robots. You can make power-based, balance-based, and speed-based robots. There are a total of 162 parts you can build, and the more you progress, the more your freedom to make robots of your playstyle increases. You can purchase module chips to give your robots buffs such as increased speed, damage, etc. You can also affect how the AI robots play in this way as well. It gives you a lot of freedom, and by the end, you'll be pretty much unbeatable. This is a really well made minigame, and I recommend playing it for sure. Next is the Boxing Club. This club revolves around the monstrously powerful Kinya Oshikiri. He is so powerful that not even Yagami could beat him in the ring at first, so he goes on a long journey to gain the power to defeat the demon. The coach, Go Todoroki, helps you along the way. The gameplay for the boxing activity is reminiscent of the Japanese exclusive Hajime no Ippo game on PS3. As you progress, you unlock new attacks and moves that can give you some opportunities to enrage and take down your foes. There are also levels as you progress too. Your health, damage, etc. will slowly increase as you defeat enemy after enemy. There are 4 sorts of circuits to complete, and each fighter will fight slightly differently. It actually has a lot of diversity, which I was surprised about. Yagami can also use EX boost and EX actions here as well, although much more scarcely since it's kind of overpowered. Your stamina will decrease slower, and if you land an EX action, the opponent will instantly be knocked down. The combat in this mode is freeform as well, and can be a ton of fun, so I recommend checking this one out as well. The last major story is the biker one. This story for this one revolves around a discipline committee student who had become the leader of the biker gang Made in Heaven. It is your job to figure out why this happened. In this one, you race around Yokohama on a bike in a death race. The enemies will constantly try to knock you off of your bike by various means such as throwing firewall bombs at you. To win, you must knock all of the racers off their bike, and then pass the finish line before the main enemy does. You unlock new bikes as you progress, and you can spend money to make the bikes better. Some bikes will have better speed, some will have better handling, and etc. The tracks will progressively become harder and more complex as you take down the leaders and climb the ranks, so you'll need to become more and more alert and focused. It's a very simple style of play, but it's actually very satisfying once you try it for yourself. You'll be drifting and nitro boosting past people and causing 27 bike pileups on the damn road. Give the biker gang story a shot and you'll see what I mean. As for the miscellaneous ones, I'll go over them very quickly. For the photography club, you go around taking pictures of students performing crimes to make them realize their wicked ways. In the casino one, you gamble with a student. Yep, that's it. For the skater club, you skate a lot and perform your investigation. In this one, there are races and skate courses you complete to unlock some items, so it does add a lot more game time than the others. The esports club, you play Virtua Fighter 5. That is also it. You may notice that I skipped the girls bar one, and that's because it's a longer one than I had led you on to believe, but it is still very simple in concept. You go to a bar and spend time with the girls working there to get closer to a girl involved in a case called Emily Mochizuki. As you get closer to the girls, you eventually unlock a side story to help them. Once this side story is completed, you can move on to the next girl, all the way until you made it to Emily. It's a sort of repetitive sort of gameplay, but it can be pretty fun since it has a minigame where you have to drunkenly answer and have a conversation and choose the correct options. It does repeat the same options unfortunately, but it is still fun nonetheless. Once the investigation is complete, however, you can actually get the one and only girlfriend in the base game. There are additional DLC girlfriends, but I'm not covering DLC in this video, only the base game. You spend time with Emily and go out on dates. You learn more about her and her past. The girlfriend interaction in this game is much more interactive than the first game's girlfriends. You walk her through the streets of Yokohama while having casual conversations, and the conversations during the dates are more interactive as well, since you have to observe her and find more things to converse about. Once you've had some fun together for a while, she will confess to you. You can decline, but I have no idea what that looks like considering I did not have the heart to do that. If you accept it though, it's very wholesome. After you become a couple, she can help you in battle if you get into street fights near the bar. She will cheer you on in a similar manner how to Mafiu did in the previous game during a certain section. You'll begin the battle with an EX action from her, and your health and EX gauge will increase as well. It's a pretty nice detail. This section was so long because the school stories are a very important aspect of this game. It ties in with the main ideas of the main story with bullying and justice while giving you a ton of side content to do and unlock. Without this side of the game, it would not be as nearly as good as it is. I hope the RGG games continue this in the future with this approach, since it makes the side content more compelling to the average player. Although the school stories make up most of the side cases, there are some side cases to do that are completely separate from them. To be honest though, they are not as good as the ones in the first Judgment game in my opinion, and that's just because the main focus went into the school stories, and I'm okay with that since it gives a lot more content that way. The main way you'll find the side cases is through the newly introduced Buzz Researcher on your phone. As you progress and eavesdrop throughout the city, you can find keywords that will lead you to new side cases to tackle. For example, in Kamurocho there is a movie scene where the scene revolves around a robbery. By using the Buzz Researcher, you find something suspicious going on since there was reports of the movie being shot somewhere else even though the shooting had wrapped up filming. It's a pretty cool system since instead of the side cases appearing out of nowhere on your map as they did before, you now have to use a little bit of effort and detective work to find what to do. Some side cases I enjoyed were the one where you have to meet the wannabe Naruto ninja Ryan Acosta from the last game. He tasks you to infiltrate a rival ninja school, because for some reason that is the thing in demand in Kamurocho, and see how they lure in students. After doing his ridiculous test, it is revealed that his sister is the reason people join the ranks. Ryan decides that he should join forces with the rival for no particular reason. The game focuses on a certain series of side cases called the Dastardly Detective. There is a corrupt detective in Yokohama, and Yagami, with the help of a detector given to him by Tsukumo, slowly tracks down the culprit. You'll find many weirdos such as people peeking in girls' windows with a drone or bugging a poor girl's handbag because he was scared to lose her for a business. 10 of the 42 side cases are dedicated to this. My favorite side case in the entire game, however, is the one where Yagami is hired to tail a young kid while he goes to the store by himself. Kaito decides to lend Yagami a hand, and some of the most ridiculous things I've ever seen in a game start happening. You use a kid's photo stand thing in the middle of the street to hide from the kid, but you get stuck, so you have to walk around with it on you right behind the kid while Yagami and Kaito start bitching at each other. It's honestly the funniest side case I've ever played, and it was much more enjoyable than the ones in the first game because of how unique it was.
ちょっとカイトウさん、歩幅合わせてよ。首がもげる。おう、悪い悪い。
One last side case that is pretty amazing is the one where you go around the city and search for squirrel collectibles. They will all give you some items, some being very rare, like the 9 Gates tile for Mahjong. The story you get after finding them all is very wholesome as well. So as you can see, it does have a lot of great side cases, but the first Judgment wins in my opinion just because of how much more diverse it was, and it had 50 side cases. I'm still not going to take a point off of Lost Judgment scorecard though, because as I said, the school stories make up more than enough of the lack of side cases. Oh, by the way, the Shinamon fight you unlock at the end of the side cases can go down a well and fucking die. How are you going to steal my moves and style on me at the same time? If I could, I would come to the screen and fuck. This game has even more life and minigames to participate in than the first game, and that's saying something considering just how much there actually was. It includes all the standard things such as mahjong, batting, darts, drone racing, etc. But it also adds things such as golf and additional arcade games such as Sonic the Fighters. Some of these games can be played with a friend by going to the main menu and selecting 2-player minigames. Not to mention all of the additional stuff from the school stories that I mentioned earlier. The life in Kamurocho is more or less the same with some changes here and there to reflect the time passing from the first game to this one. A small example is that lockpicking place you could work at. It has now been replaced by a pharmacy. Yokohama, on the other hand, is your oyster to explore. There is a ton of life in the city, ranging from people on the streets, the cars on the road, and much more. Here's a clip of me roaming around Yokohama to demonstrate like I did for Kamurocho in the first game. As you hopefully noticed, you can also ride your skateboard and do some small tricks around the city as well. This is very convenient if you don't want to use the taxi to fast travel somewhere, which is also an option, but still want to get around quickly. What makes this even better is that enemies won't try to attack you while you're on the skateboard either, which finally gives an easier way to avoid those random encounters when you really just want to do something else. One of the coolest things they added in this game is how you can get ability bonuses for a limited time when you eat at the shop's menu. You can have your SP for battle increased, make rare materials appear on the ground, acquire greater items from battles, and have your yen gain increase. These things make eating at the shops more compelling than going to your local Popo store and buying a ton of bentos and just eating those like some college student. No offense to college students. Some of these items are extremely valuable and useful, so you should definitely make use of these boosts from the stores. You can also roam around with a detective dog after you progress into the main story far enough. As you cruise around either Kamurocho or Yokohama, the dog can find some rare items for you on the ground. These can range from the Master System games that you can actually play at the office, equipment, crafting materials, and more. So if walking the dog wasn't enough for you, it's actually beneficial to you to roam around the city and explore with the cute thing. The Buzz Researcher can also show you how people around the city are feeling and what they're up to. Some of them are funny and some are pretty sad, but it's awesome that such small details like this exist. It makes the world feel truly alive. My favorite side activity from the first game, drone racing, is Bat. It's mostly unchanged, but once you complete all the leagues, then you unlock the drones that were DLC in the first game. There are a few new things added, such as the orange boost panels that will boost you for much farther and longer. The core of it though is the same, and I don't think that's particularly a bad thing. Don't fix what's not broken, right? And since money is so common in this game, getting all of the drone parts is much less time consuming than in the first game where you would have to do Dice Cube for hours on end. The new courses make it feel like a breath of fresh air as well. Speaking of Dice and Cube, that makes a return as well. The friend from the previous game, Toshiro, is the manager of the game store now. He makes some changes to add a rival to the game who you have to beat to the finish line. You can use skills throughout the game to do things such as skip the opponent's turn, give yourself extra moves, and swap places with the opponent. You can also use or play against VR versions of Kaito, Sugiura, Higashi, and the other friends from the games who helped you fight against the Keihin gang. There is also an additional arcade game next to the Dice and Cube called Ercelios. This is a bullet hell style game where you have to defeat all of the enemies before they hit you. You can only take a few hits, but you can purchase some items to make it easier. It's actually quite fun, but it isn't very long unfortunately. It only has around 10 levels. The golfing is very similar to the ones in the other Yakuza games it is featured in. You have a bingo mode and a traditional golfing mode called Closest to the Pin, where you try to get as close to the hole in one while obstacles are blocking your shot path. There is also a sort of short minigame, but it is pretty fun. I'd say you would get around 45 minutes out of it if you just want to do 100% completion, but if you like golf in general and want to be a perfectionist, then you may get much more. The newly added arcade games are pretty fun as well. They removed Virtua Fighter 2, but other than that, there's only new stuff alongside the ones that were there previously. There was a new on-rail shooter called Hama of the Dead. It is pretty much the same game as Kamuro of the Dead from the first game, but it is now based in Yokohama instead. It is still pretty fun to go for high scores and see how fast you can defeat the enemies though. There are also plenty of racing games such as Super Hang-On where you race motorcycles across a circuit of your choice. Clearly, this game has no shortage of side content for you to enjoy, and you'll easily spend tens of hours on these alone if you enjoy everything. I took around 40 hours to beat the main story, but to get 100% it took me around 92 hours, so you're talking over double the amount of time on the side content than the main game. If you like being a completionist, then these type of games are definitely for you, so check them out.
Test your might.
By far, one of my favorite parts of the game is the Gauntlet. In the Gauntlet, you have to complete challenges in certain areas with certain restrictions. For example, the first one in the battle section requires you to use only the snake style and make every enemy surrender under a time limit. Of course, since this is the first one, it's fairly easy and more of an introduction, but the later ones take a lot of skill and time. Most of my favorite gauntlets to do are in the Gauntlets tab. The one at the end, called Action Star, makes you navigate a section of the story with hardly any help. It's a long and grueling one, and you have to play very well all the way through because one bad mistake could kill you and you have to restart from the beginning if that happens. It really tests your ability as a player in every way since you have to remember where to go, then you have to get there without faltering on the parkour or combat. In the bosses section, there are story bosses you can fight again, but with added restrictions as you'd expect. Some will require you to use only Crane, some will give you the little to no skills, and much more, as you can clearly see here on the screen. I'm not going to show you what the bosses are because it would obviously be a spoiler and that's what I want to avoid. Some of these are really damn tough, but extremely satisfying to beat. As you can see here, I beat one of them with less than a fifth of a second remaining. I jumped out of my seat with excitement. I won't go over too many more just for the sake of you being able to experience them for yourself. There are a ton of various ones though, like the stealth one, which is actually pretty damn hard at first because of how intense and long it is, and some where you have to complete the entire thing in EX boost. The mother of all gauntlets though is the 100-man conqueror. You have to defeat 100 enemies within a 10-minute time limit, all by yourself. This is quite possibly one of the most fun things in this entire game. I can easily see myself coming back to this over and over again to improve my combat ability, my speed, and my style. It's actually what I've been using to get a lot of footage for the combat through this game, and this video. Just to prove how awesome this gauntlet is, I'll play a 30-second or so clip from it where I try to show off as much as I can before we move on to the final chapter. Lost Judgment just might be one of my favorite games of all time. It ticks off all of the boxes that make a perfect game to me. Incredible side activities, immersive gameplay, dozens of hours of content, incredible main story, delightful NPCs in the world, and much more. This is one of those games where after I finished it, I immediately wanted to keep playing. Even after I got the Platinum Trophy, I kept playing to complete the gauntlets and have much more fun with the combat in the 100-man Conqueror. I don't know if or when we'll get another Judgment game, but I am excited for the Kaito story DLC coming here shortly. If this video does well, I'll try to make a review of all the DLC as a bonus for you guys, so please leave me some feedback here in the comments and drop a like and all that good jazz. It really helps me with the algorithm and I'll love you forever. So, with all of this in mind, what is my verdict? Well, you may have already been able to guess, but this game is a 10 out of 10, and it is my definite game of the year for 2021. I'm not even going to call it a candidate because there is no debate. I will probably continue to play this game for a while, so if you'll excuse me, I have my duty as a detective to uphold. So if you made it to the end of this video, I want to give you a round of applause and a bow and a salute because this video took me tons of hours to make. It was super fun. Love this game, man. If you skip to the end to hear what I want to say, please watch the review, at least some of it. If you don't like it, then, leave a comment. I would say dislike, but YouTube's removing the dislike button. Like, what? But, yeah, this game is something truly special. If you made it to the end of the first Judgment review, you already know what's coming, so this is not the end. And if you did not make it to the end and you are here, then, well, you're in for a little bit of a treat. So, again, thank you guys. I love you so much. Make a deformed heart here. I'll try anyways. But, yeah, enjoy the following thing. Love you guys. Please like, comment, and subscribe and all that. And I'll be on my merry way. Hope to see you guys in the future. Thank you very much.